So what makes Trump a fascist? What makes Trump a fascist?
He does things without
Yeah, talk loud. I don't have my mic on.
I'm not really good into interviews stuff like that.
Sorry?
He just does everything he wants, and not following laws, or he's a convicted felon. That's all I know.
But your sign says he's a fascist, and I'm just curious what makes him a fascist. So what brings you guys out here today?
Just because I saw people were hanging out with people for
same thing as everyone else. Executive overreach.
And what brings you out here today?
What doesn't?
Can you explain a little bit for our viewers what this means?
Go ahead.
Raise your hand out.
Cactistocracy. Government by the least suitable or competent citizens of a state. Seems to fit, doesn't it?
Curious though, because we've seen this massive elite freakout about what Trump is doing here and about globalization. I've just been sent a story here that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Britain, is about to announce that globalization is basically over, the era is over, because people don't see the benefits. So is this an interesting sort of data point that Donald Trump may offend the sort of the chattering classes, as we call them down here, and yet he is on the money with where most people are when it comes to saying, you know what, that slightly cheaper television is great, but I'd rather have the job and the dignity.
I think so, yeah. It's a fundamental turning point. It's big of a turning point. If you look at some of the big changes in America, the Reagan reforms, which took place in the early 1980s, or the advent of technology, sort of a computer on every desk that happened in the early 1990s, the commercialization of the internet in the early 2000s, I think we're at that point. And you're right, politically, Starmer, it's great he's coming around. His party, of course, isn't coming around because all of Europe, Western Europe, not Hungary, but a lot of it. First of all, they don't let people decide who are going to vote for. I mean, go try and vote for Marine Le Pen. You can't do that. Try and vote for having controlled borders. That's politically incorrect. It's non-woke, and the elite won't have you do it. So it's great that Steinmeier said that. Maybe he's gotten some religion, but I'll have to see it to believe it.
Now, Christian, I want to ask you about free speech. J.D. Vance has made a big thing about that as regards particularly Britain. And he's mentioned before with NATO that it's a key thing, that America doesn't see why it should defend other nations if they don't share the same values. Here in Australia, we're embarking on some pretty severe restrictions on free speech on both sides of politics. Now, you mentioned our 10% tariff. That's actually our GST, our consumption tax, our VAT. That applies to everything across the board, so we can't withdraw it from American goods. So what can we trade with America to get rid of those 10% tariffs? Should we be looking at restoring free speech, for example?
Well, I think certainly that would be helpful. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see if Trump. He said that Vietnam had offered something and it was going to be a big deal. They face very high tariffs as of April 2nd, and so do those come down? Does any country get out of the 10% tariff, or is that just something that everyone faces? We don't know. I think it's important to differentiate Australia. During COVID, I think a lot of Americans noticed that lockdowns, varied across the United States from severe to less severe, and we're a little surprised that Australia seemed pretty severe under what was nominally a liberal government. But, contrast that to Western Europe. I think people would see that the United States has a lot more in common values-wise with Australia. I know you have an election coming up, so it'll be interesting to see how that happens. But when you look at the terminal decay of Western Europe and in NATO and things like that, I think the Pacific is a different story. And people think of it economically as the future. It's where the biggest threats come from, China, but also the biggest economic opportunities for growth. And also, you were talking earlier on the program about net zero, just being a great producer of coal and iron ore and other minerals. The fact that I think Australia, probably easier than Germany, Britain, France, can dispense with that sort of nonsense, that sort of civic religion of climate change alarmism, could endear the country to a lot of people.
Well,
Absolutely.
it could endear it, but we would actually
endear
have
it to the people of Australia for a start.
Well, if only we had politicians who are actually advocating for that position. But
Yep.
One of the key issues for the election, and something that seems to no longer be an issue at all, Christian, is illegal immigration in America. I saw some figures for March, just record lows. How did the illegal immigration crisis, this thing that we were told was almost unsolvable, get solved in a matter of weeks?
Yeah, it's amazing just what intent will do and how quickly words spread. When people hear by word of mouth, all you have to do is show up, go cross through Mexico, they'll let you right through, and just show up and say you're a refugee. You have a well-founded fear of persecution. Now, if you're the head of the Venezuelan opposition, then yeah, you qualify for that. But if you're just someone who wants a better life, and I understand that, I'd probably try and be sneaking somewhere else if I were them too. But anyway, just the fact that they can be turned away, that they may be forced to remain in Mexico, and that the apex criminals among them are going to be sent to some very unpleasant prisons in Central America. We won't even just bother with putting them on trial here, just deport them. Word gets around pretty quickly. So even without building a wall, just the idea that you're going to enforce some of the laws on the books, and it just shows that Biden could have done this if he wanted to. He said he needed more money and more laws, but he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Whitten, always great to chat to you. Thanks so much for coming on Outsiders. It'll be fascinating to see what happens over the next few weeks.
Thank you. My pleasure.
With the tariffs, etc.